Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Have you ever felt that moment when you enter a room and before you even speak a word, something shifts? It's almost like the energy bends. You sense eyes watching you, conversations pause for just a beat, and without meaning to, your presence alone feels like it has unsettled someone. You're not trying to take up space. You're not trying to draw attention. You're simply being yourself. And yet, you can feel it, can't you? The sideways glances, the forced smiles, the subtle tension in the air. Maybe someone cracks a joke at your expense. Maybe someone whispers, she thinks she's all that. Maybe someone avoids you altogether. You walk away wondering, did I do something wrong? Was I too much? And that's where the quiet ache begins. Because the truth is, you weren't trying to overpower anyone. You were just showing up as you are. And somehow that alone felt threatening to someone else. I want you to think about the countless times you've questioned your strength because of how others reacted to it. Maybe you spoke your truth in a conversation and felt the sting of someone rolling their eyes. Maybe you celebrated a win, finishing a degree, starting a business, healing from a painful past. And instead of support, you felt the silence of people who should have been cheering the loudest. Maybe you set a boundary, said no for once in your life, and suddenly you were labeled selfish or cold. And you sat with that label, turning it over and over in your hands, asking yourself if they were right. It's painful, isn't it, when the very things that are evidence of your growth, your courage, your resilience are twisted into accusations against you. It makes you second guess. It makes you shrink. It makes you wonder if maybe the safest path is to stay quiet, stay agreeable, stay small. But deep inside, there's a voice that won't let you. That voice reminds you of all the battles you've fought. The nights you cried yourself to sleep, the mornings you dragged yourself out of bed when it felt impossible, the relationships you endured where you gave and gave until there was nothing left. That voice knows the cost of your strength. It knows you didn't wake up one day magically confident or fearless. No, your strength was born in the fire. It was forged in heartbreak, in disappointment, in the countless times you chose to stand up, even when no one stood beside you. And now, after everything you've survived, you carry yourself differently. You walk taller. You speak with more clarity. You know your worth in a way you didn't before. And it shows. You can't hide it. You shouldn't have to. Yet here's the paradox. The very strength you've earned through a hardship often unsettles the people who haven't yet faced their own. Your healed wounds remind them of the places they're still bleeding. Your boundaries highlight where they have none. Your confidence stirs up the insecurities they keep buried. And instead of seeing your strength as light, as encouragement, as proof that healing is possible, they experience it as a mirror they'd rather not look into. So they flinch. They criticize. They withdraw. They joke. And you're left standing there, wondering if being yourself is the problem. I know that feeling intimately because so many women have lived it. Women who have been told they're too loud, too opinionated, too ambitious, too emotional, too independent, too something. It's a refrain that echoes through decades of conditioning: be less, smile more, don't upset the balance. And for a long time, maybe you tried. You softened your edges, muted your victories, swallowed your truth just to keep the peace. You believed that being accepted mattered more than being authentic. But peace that requires you to disappear isn't peace at all. It's a slow erosion of your soul. That's why I want to tell you this today. There is nothing wrong with the way you carry your strength. There is nothing wrong with the way you've grown. You don't need to apologize for showing up fully in the space you were meant to occupy. You don't need to apologize for no longer playing small. What feels like a threat to someone else is often just the reflection of your courage against their unhealed fear. It's not a sign that you need to change. It's a sign that you've already changed, and not everyone can meet you there. Imagine for a moment that you are a lighthouse standing on the edge of a stormy sea. You don't shine to make the waves calmer. You don't shine to please the ships that pass by. You shine because it is your nature. Some people will be drawn to your light. Others will resent it. Some will be guided by it. Others will cover their eyes. But none of that changes the fact that you were built to shine. And the storms you've weathered, they're the very reason your light is so strong now. So the next time you feel that tension when you enter a room, the next time someone makes you question if you're too much, remember this: your strength isn't the problem. Their insecurity is. And their discomfort doesn't mean you need to shrink. It means you've grown into something they don't yet understand. That moment of unease isn't a warning for you to back down. It's evidence that you've stepped into your true power. And I know, it's tempting to retreat, to tone it down, to make yourself more digestible. But think about it: every time you choose to shrink, you teach yourself that other people's comfort is worth more than your authenticity. Every time you silence your truth, you reinforce the lie that who you are is too much. But the reality is, you are not too much. You are exactly enough. You always were. The only difference now is that you finally know it. This journey you're on, the one where you're reclaiming your worth, your voice, your presence, it's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's about finally believing that you don't have to apologize for existing in your fullness. It's about trusting that the right people, the ones who are also committed to healing, to growth, to living authentically, will never be intimidated by you. They'll be inspired. They'll rise alongside you. They'll see your strength and think, if she can, maybe I can too. So, let this be the beginning of a new way of walking into rooms. Not with hesitation, not with fear, not with second guessing, but with the quiet confidence that says, I have earned every ounce of this strength. I have walked through fire to get here. I don't need to shrink for anyone. I don't need to apologize for who I've become. I can take up space, I can stand tall, I can be fully me, and that is more than enough. The real struggle for so many strong women is not the battles they fight to build their lives, but the way people around them react once they finally step into their strength. The problem isn't that you're too loud, too bold, or too confident. The problem is that insecure people interpret your strength as a spotlight on their weakness. And instead of dealing with their own shadows, they try to dim your light. That's the unspoken tension so many of us live with. You've fought tooth and nail to heal, to stand on your own, to reclaim your voice, and suddenly you find that this new version of you unsettles people you thought would support you. It's confusing, it's painful, and it leaves you wondering if you've done something wrong. It happens in quiet ways and loud ways. Maybe you share an accomplishment you're proud of, and the room goes silent. Instead of congratulations, you're met with dismissive comments like, must be nice to have all that free time, or, well, not everyone can just do that. Maybe you set a boundary, finally saying no to something you used to agree to out of guilt, and suddenly you're labeled as difficult, selfish, or cold. Or maybe you simply walk with a confidence you didn't have years ago, and without even opening your mouth, you can feel the unease it creates in others. The problem is rarely your behavior, it's their perception of it. But because you're empathetic, because you care, you internalize it. You go home at night replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you should have said less, celebrated more quietly, or softened your words. You start to question if maybe they're right. Maybe you are too much. This problem is so common because for generations, women have been conditioned to keep the peace at all costs. We've been taught to prioritize harmony, to be the ones who smooth over tension, to make ourselves small so that others can feel comfortable. Many of us were raised on the unspoken rule, don't outshine, don't brag, don't disrupt. And when you've carried those rules your entire life, it's jarring to discover that the very qualities you've worked so hard to develop, confidence, boundaries, resilience, are the ones that suddenly make others uncomfortable. It creates an invisible conflict. Do I stay true to myself? Or do I shrink back into the version of me they prefer? The deeper truth is that insecure people often misinterpret strength as judgment. When you stand in your confidence, they don't see your story, the heartbreaks and struggles it took to get here. They see only their own reflection in your presence. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your courage exposes their fear. Your clarity makes them realize where they're still confused. And instead of being inspired, instead of asking themselves what they could learn from you, they turn defensive. They protect their ego by tearing you down or pulling away. It's not about you. It's about what you represent. But that doesn't mean it doesn't sting. I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. It's valid to feel hurt by this. Too often we're told, don't take it personally, as if we should simply brush off the coldness, the gossip, the criticism. But the truth is, it does feel personal when it comes from people you love, when it comes from people you thought were your friends, when it comes from family members whose approval you once craved. It feels like betrayal. It feels like rejection. And pretending it doesn't hurt only deepens the wound. So, let me validate this for you. It's okay if it hurts when your strength unsettles others. It's okay if you cry about it. It's okay if you feel lonely in the spaces you used to feel supported. Feeling the sting doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. At the same time, it's important to see the bigger picture of why this keeps happening. Many people are not taught how to process their insecurities in healthy ways. They weren't raised in environments where vulnerability was welcomed. Instead, they were taught to compare, to compete, to measure their worth against others. So when you show up with your head held high, when you embody healing and growth, you unknowingly step onto their scoreboard, and they feel like they're losing. But here's the thing, you're not playing their game. You're not competing, you're simply living your truth. The tragedy is that they can't see it that way. This problem often leads women into cycles of self-betrayal. To keep the peace, you silence yourself. To avoid criticism, you downplay your achievements. To maintain relationships, you cross your own boundaries. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to trade authenticity for acceptance. It feels easier in the moment, less conflict, fewer cold shoulders. But deep down, you know the cost is too high. Because every time you betray yourself to keep someone else comfortable, you lose a piece of who you are. And the painful irony is, even when you do shrink, it doesn't guarantee their approval. They may still criticize. They may still feel intimidated. So the shrinking achieves nothing but your own loss of self. Another layer of this problem is how misunderstood it is. Society often paints strong women as intimidating, aggressive, or unlikable. But what's rarely talked about is how exhausting it can be to constantly navigate other people's discomfort. It's not that you want to intimidate anyone. It's that your mere presence, your healed spirit, your unwillingness to settle becomes a mirror. And you can't control how people respond to that. That's the heart of the problem. You are punished for what you've overcome rather than celebrated for it. So many women carry this weight in silence. They wonder why friendships dissolve after they start therapy, why family members criticize them after they pursue dreams, why colleagues grow distant when they step into leadership. And because no one names it out loud, they think they're the only ones going through it. They think they must have done something wrong. But you're not alone. This is a shared experience among women who choose healing over pretending, growth over stagnation, truth over silence. The problem is not isolated to you. It's systemic, woven into the fabric of how society responds to female strength. I want you to know that this confusion you've felt, this loneliness, this ache when others don't clap for you, it's not evidence that you're broken. It's evidence that you're brave. You're walking a path that not everyone is ready to walk, and that difference will always stir up reactions in people who aren't there yet. Yes, the problem is painful. Yes, it can make you doubt yourself, but it is not proof that you are too much. It is proof that you are living authentically in a world that often prefers women to stay silent and small. So the problem isn't you. The problem is the collision between your growth and their fear. The problem is the way insecurity disguises itself as criticism, silence, or distance. The problem is the pressure you feel to shrink when all your soul wants is to expand. And as heavy as that problem feels, naming it is the first step toward freedom. Because once you see it for what it is, you no longer have to carry the shame of believing you're the cause. You're not the problem. You're the evidence that healing is possible. And that's something worth holding on to, even when others can't yet celebrate it. When we start looking deeper into why strong women intimidate insecure people, the answer is not always what it first appears to be. On the surface, it might look like people are simply unkind, jealous, or dismissive. But the deeper truth is far more complex, and honestly, far more revealing about human nature. People who feel threatened by your strength are not necessarily angry at you. They're wrestling with what your presence awakens in them. When you stand in your wholeness, it doesn't just take up space, it reflects something back to them. It shows them the gap between who they are and who they want to be. And sometimes that gap feels unbearable. It's easy to believe that if you were just gentler, quieter, or less outspoken, you'd be easier to love. But here's the surprising reality: it wouldn't make a difference. Because the problem isn't your volume or your boundaries or your confidence. The problem is that your authenticity highlights the places where others are still performing. Think about that for a moment. We live in a world where so many people wear masks every day. They pretend to be happy when they're exhausted. They nod in agreement when their hearts say no. They chase approval while abandoning their own needs. And then you walk into the room, real, grounded, unwilling to play the game anymore, and without saying a word, you break the unspoken contract of pretending. You expose the truth that there's another way to live. That's why insecure people don't always celebrate strength. It's not because they hate it, but because it unsettles them. It forces them to feel the weight of their own compromises. They see your courage and think of the times they stayed silent. They see your healing and remember the wounds they've ignored. They see your freedom and realize how trapped they feel. And instead of admitting to themselves that they long for what you've found, it feels easier to dismiss you, criticize you, or distance themselves. This is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their fear. There's a story I think about often, one that captures this perfectly. A woman in her early 60s told me about how she finally left a toxic marriage after decades of convincing herself she had to stay. For years, she played small, avoided conflict, and tried to keep the peace. But eventually, she realized she couldn't keep betraying herself. So she walked away. At first, she felt proud and free, like she could finally breathe again. But what surprised her was not her ex-husband's reaction, but the reactions of some of her closest friends. Instead of cheering for her, they pulled away. Some even criticized her, saying things like, "At your age, why would you start over now?" For a while, she was devastated. She thought, maybe they're right, maybe I made a mistake. But over time, she realized the truth. Her decision to walk away from what was hurting her made them confront the fact that they were still staying in situations that suffocated them. Her freedom exposed their fear of choosing the same, and rather than face that fear, they turned their discomfort into judgment. This is the pattern we see again and again. The strength of one woman often exposes the places where others are still stuck. And that's why you can't take their reactions as truth about you. Their discomfort is a mirror, not a verdict. It says nothing about your worth, but it says everything about the gap between where they are and where they long to be. What's fascinating about this insight is that it also helps us see why this intimidation feels so personal. It feels like rejection. It feels like betrayal. It feels like loss. But when you step back, you realize it's not about you at all. It's about the stories they're telling themselves when they look at you. If you've ever been called too confident or too independent, it's not really about the size of your presence. It's about the smallness of theirs. If you've ever been told, "You've changed," in a tone that wasn't meant as a compliment, what they're really saying is, "You've grown in a way I haven't." Your evolution becomes their confrontation, and that can feel threatening to someone who isn't ready to evolve. The counterintuitive truth here is this: the more healed you become, the lonelier it can feel at first. Because healing shifts the energy you carry. It changes what you tolerate, what you accept, what you're willing to stay silent about. And those changes disrupt the dynamics you've had with people who preferred the version of you that was easier to control. That's why strength often feels like it costs so much. It costs relationships. It costs comfort. It costs the illusion of belonging. But what it gives you is immeasurable: peace, authenticity, self-respect, and the possibility of relationships that are based on truth rather than pretense. It's also important to notice that not everyone responds to your strength with intimidation. Some people will be drawn to it, hungry for it, inspired by it. They'll see you shine and think, "If she can rise after everything she's been through, maybe I can too." Your courage will give them permission to face their fears. Your healing will make them believe in their own. And this is the ripple effect of strength. It doesn't just change you. It changes what's possible for everyone who witnesses it. But to reach those people, you can't dim yourself for the ones who aren't ready yet. You have to keep shining, even if it makes some turn away. So the insight here is both liberating and sobering. Liberating because it shows you that the reactions of insecure people are not your burden to carry. Sobering because it reminds you that not everyone will clap when you rise. Some will criticize. Some will leave. Some will resent you. And if you don't understand why, you'll think the problem is you. But when you see clearly that their reaction is rooted in their own story, not yours, you're free to stop apologizing. You're free to stop shrinking. You're free to keep growing without needing their approval. The lesson is this: strength isn't just about what you overcome, it's about what your presence awakens in others. And sometimes what it awakens is resistance, fear, or jealousy. But that doesn't mean you should hide it. It means you've touched something real, something that matters. And if you can hold on to that truth, you'll walk with a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. You'll know that even when others turn away, you're still on the right path. Because real strength isn't about making everyone comfortable. It's about living authentically, even when it unsettles the world around you. When you finally understand why your strength can feel threatening to others, the next step is learning how to navigate it without losing yourself in the process. It's one thing to realize the problem isn't you. It's another to put practical strategies into place that protect your energy, honor your growth, and allow you to continue living authentically. The first thing to understand is that your strength is not something to hide. It is a gift, a hard-earned treasure, a reflection of every struggle you've endured and every battle you've won. Protecting it doesn't mean isolating yourself from others, but it does mean being intentional about who and how you allow people into your space. You have the right to surround yourself with individuals who support, celebrate, and elevate you rather than drain or diminish you. This is not selfish, it's necessary for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Begin with your boundaries. Strong women often find themselves apologizing for having limits. We've been conditioned to believe that saying no, asserting our needs, or demanding respect is somehow rude or unkind. But boundaries are not the enemy of love or friendship. They are the foundation of healthy relationships. They tell the world that you value yourself and expect to be treated with dignity. If someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, that's a reflection of their discomfort, not a signal that your limits are wrong. Start by defining what you will and will not accept. If a conversation turns toxic, you leave. If a friend repeatedly disrespects your time or your values, you reconsider the relationship. If family members try to guilt or manipulate you, you hold your ground. Every boundary you uphold is a declaration of self, respect, and an act of courage. Another practical step is learning to recognize projection. When someone criticizes you, judges you, or tries to pull you down, take a moment to consider whether their words are truly about you or about them. Often, the people who react most strongly to your strength are wrestling with insecurities, fears, or disappointments that have nothing to do with your actions. When you see their reaction for what it is, a reflection of their inner struggle rather than an assessment of your worth, you reclaim your power. You stop internalizing their discomfort as proof that you've done something wrong, and you free yourself from unnecessary guilt or self-doubt. It's also essential to cultivate a circle that lifts you. Strength thrives in community. When you are surrounded by people who celebrate your victories, listen without judgment, and offer encouragement rather than competition, your confidence multiplies. Seek out friendships and relationships that inspire growth and mutual respect. The energy you allow into your life directly influences your ability to maintain strength and resilience. It doesn't mean excluding everyone who challenges you, but it does mean prioritizing connections that feed your soul rather than drain it. Sometimes that requires difficult choices, stepping back from people who cannot meet you with respect. But in doing so, you create space for healthier, more supportive relationships. Another critical aspect of navigating this dynamic is staying compassionate but firm. Recognize that the fear, insecurity, or jealousy that someone directs at you often comes from a place of pain. You can respond with kindness without sacrificing your boundaries. For example, if a friend makes a snide comment about your accomplishments, you might acknowledge their feelings without retreating. I hear that you're feeling frustrated. This decision was important for me, and I hope we can support each other even if it's hard. Compassion does not mean tolerating disrespect, and it does not require you to shrink. It simply allows you to approach difficult interactions with clarity and grace. One of the most practical tools in this journey is self-reflection. Regularly check in with yourself to ensure you're acting in alignment with your values, not reacting out of fear of judgment. Journaling, meditation, or quiet walks can provide space to process your emotions and reaffirm your commitment to living authentically. When you are grounded in your own truth, the reactions of insecure people carry less weight. You start to see them for what they are: temporary disturbances in your path, not obstacles to your worth. It's also helpful to develop strategies for handling criticism or envy without internalizing it. One way to do this is mental reframing. When someone expresses discomfort with your strength, instead of thinking, "They don't like me," reframe it as, "They are uncomfortable because I am living in a way that challenges them to face their own truth." This shift in perspective transforms what once felt like rejection into an opportunity for empathy and detachment. It allows you to maintain your confidence while acknowledging that other people's struggles are not your responsibility. Another strategy is practicing assertive communication. Strong women often encounter resistance because others are not used to them voicing their needs or standing firm. Being clear, calm, and consistent in your words is key. Speak from your experience without blaming or shaming others. State your boundaries and your intentions, and remain consistent. Over time, people begin to respect clarity more than they respect manipulation or passive aggression. Consistency reinforces the understanding that your strength is non-negotiable and that your presence is not up for debate. An additional step is celebrating your own growth. Take time to acknowledge the journey that brought you here, the nights you endured, the obstacles you overcame, the choices you made to honor yourself. When you celebrate yourself, you no longer rely on external validation. You begin to see your worth as inherent, not conditional. The stronger you become internally, the less affected you are by the discomfort or criticism of others. Your confidence becomes a shield and a magnet, drawing the right people closer and naturally distancing those who cannot align with your energy. It's equally important to remember that setting these boundaries and navigating these dynamics is a process, not a single decision. Some days it feels effortless. Other days, you'll feel the pull to apologize, to explain, to shrink. And that is normal. Strength is not linear. Courage does not mean perfection. Every time you recommit to your authenticity, every time you resist the urge to dim yourself, you are practicing resilience. You are modeling what it looks like to live fully, unapologetically, and with integrity. Finally, never underestimate the power of your example. By living authentically and maintaining your boundaries, you not only protect your energy, but you also inspire others to do the same. Your courage can give someone else permission to speak their truth, set their boundaries, or pursue their dreams. You become a beacon for the next generation of strong women who will one day face the same challenges. In this way, your strength is not only a personal victory, it is a ripple that transforms lives around you, creating spaces where honesty, courage, and integrity are valued over fear and insecurity. Navigating a world that feels intimidated by your strength is not always easy. It takes patience, self-awareness, and a willingness to stand firm. But when you implement these steps, establishing boundaries, recognizing projection, surrounding yourself with support, practicing compassion without compromise, reflecting on your values, reframing criticism, communicating assertively, and celebrating your growth, you create a life that honors your strength while mitigating the impact of insecurity around you. You don't just survive, you thrive. And in thriving, you not only protect your light but amplify it, showing the world what is possible when a woman refuses to dim herself for anyone else. Imagine for a moment what life feels like when you no longer shrink to accommodate the insecurities of others. Picture yourself waking up in the morning with a sense of ease that comes from knowing you no longer need anyone's approval to feel whole. You get out of bed with a quiet confidence, a steadiness in your heart that was hard, won through years of struggle, heart-touch, and relentless self-discovery. Each movement you make, each word you speak, carries the weight of someone who has endured, who has survived, and who refuses to settle for less than the truth of who she is. There is freedom in this way of living, a liberation that comes from understanding that your light is not a threat, your voice is not a burden, and your boundaries are not something to apologize for. You begin to inhabit your own life fully, unapologetically, without the constant, exhausting need to make everyone around you comfortable. When you live this way, your relationships transform as well. The people who were once intimidated by your strength will either rise to meet you or drift away. And that is exactly as it should be. The friendships and connections that remain are authentic. They are built on mutual respect, admiration, and alignment of values. You'll notice that people who are truly meant to be in your life will celebrate your victories, encourage your growth, and honor your choices without judgment or resentment. And the ones who cannot will simply fall away, leaving you with the clarity and space to cultivate deeper, more meaningful connections. There's a profound sense of relief in recognizing that not everyone is meant to stay, that not everyone deserves your energy, and that your presence is not a commodity to be negotiated. It is a declaration of who you are. Your perspective on criticism and envy also changes. Where once you might have internalized someone's discomfort as a reflection of your inadequacy, now you can see it for what it really is, a projection of their own struggles. You no longer take it personally. Instead, you respond with grace and calm, understanding that their reaction has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their inability to face their own shadows. This shift in mindset is transformative because it frees you from the weight of carrying other people's fears and insecurities. You no longer bend, twist, or dilute yourself to make others feel comfortable. Instead, you stand firm, radiant, and unwavering, anchored in the truth of who you are. In this transformed state, your sense of self-respect deepens. You stop apologizing for having opinions, for speaking your truth, for taking up space, and for pursuing your dreams. You begin to recognize the difference between humility and self-erasure, understanding that being strong and confident is not arrogance. It is authenticity. The quiet moments of self-reflection reinforce this truth. When you look in the mirror, you see a woman who has fought, healed, and grown. A woman who has endured the storms and emerged resilient and luminous. There's a pride that is not boastful, but rooted in the deep acknowledgement of your journey, your courage, and your unwavering commitment to living fully. This transformation also impacts the way you handle fear. You start to see fear not as a signal to shrink, but as a signal that growth is occurring. Every time you face discomfort, confrontation, or resistance from others, you recognize it as an opportunity to practice courage, to stand in your truth, and to reinforce your boundaries. The fear no longer controls you. It becomes a companion, a teacher, and a guide pointing toward continued growth. You learn to move through life with the awareness that challenges are inevitable, but the way you respond defines the quality of your experience. Your strength becomes a habit, an internal compass guiding you through complex social dynamics with grace and confidence. Living fully in your strength also changes the way you approach your own dreams and aspirations. You no longer postpone your goals to fit into the expectations of others. You take bold steps toward your purpose, knowing that your vision is valid, your voice matters, and your contributions are important. The fear of judgment no longer paralyzes you because you have cultivated the internal validation that comes from self-acceptance and self-respect. Every milestone you achieve, no matter how small, is a testament to your resilience and determination. You celebrate yourself unapologetically, honoring the work, the sacrifices, and the courage it took to arrive at this moment. As your life transforms, so too does your influence on others. By embodying strength, authenticity, and resilience, you become a beacon of possibility. People around you begin to see that it is possible to live without compromise, to honor oneself fully, and to navigate the world with integrity and confidence. You give them permission to step into their own strength, to heal their own wounds, and to pursue their own dreams. Your presence creates a ripple effect, inspiring others to rise, to reclaim their voices, and to refuse to settle for lives that do not honor their worth. This impact is subtle yet profound, a quiet revolution that begins with your refusal to shrink and expands outward in ways you may never fully see. Even in moments of challenge, when others resist your strength or struggle to accept it, you respond differently. You no longer take it as a personal attack. Instead, you recognize it as part of the natural tension that occurs when someone else's insecurities collide with your growth. You remain steady, anchored, and centered, knowing that your responsibility is not to manage other people's discomfort, but to maintain your own integrity. This approach cultivates inner peace, a sense of calm that comes from trusting yourself, trusting your journey, and trusting the process of life. In this transformed state, joy becomes more accessible. You experience fulfillment not dependent on external approval, but rooted in the alignment of your actions with your values. Simple moments, laughing with friends who truly see you, pursuing hobbies that light you up, achieving goals that matter to you, take on new significance because they are infused with authenticity. Your happiness is no longer conditional on fitting in, being liked, or pleasing others. It is a direct result of living in alignment with the truth of who you are unapologetically and boldly. Finally, this transformation invites a deep sense of self-compassion. You recognize that growth is a journey, not a destination. You forgive yourself for past moments of self-doubt, for times when you shrank to make others comfortable, for times when you allowed fear to dictate your choices. You honor the process, the lessons, and the resilience that have brought you to this point. Self-compassion fuels your courage, allowing you to continue stepping into your strength without hesitation, guilt, or apology. When you live in this way, your life becomes a testament to the power of authenticity. You show the world that strength is not a threat, but a gift. You demonstrate that courage is contagious. You prove that living fully, unapologetically, and in alignment with one's values is not only possible but transformative. And you leave a legacy, not just of achievements, but of inspiration, empowerment, and the quiet yet undeniable truth that a woman who refuses to dim herself can change the world around her.